Hello, here we are again in the third video, and we will discuss women's rights. Now, of course, much can be said about this. You can, write entire books about the subject, and again, we'll see how the meeting goes. But my goal here is just to, I will try to define what my goal is. How do conservatives want it? In other words, I believe it is very clear to all people, even in Afghanistan, the opposition to the Taliban will say that that the norms of pre-modern society cannot continue. That the status of women 200 years ago can't be their status now. And the more society modernizes, the role of women will change. That is inevitable. That is no one's asking us about that. But what we are being asked is, what kind of change do we actually want? How do we envision this change? If you are a Westerner, if you are what they call a liberal or a socialist or etc., you can believe in ideas like radical feminism, which envision radical change in the role of women in family life, family planning, women in the workforce, legal status of women, etc. But again, conservatives like BJP or RSS or Israeli conservatives do not believe in these ideas. Many of these ideas run contrary to Jewish religion, of course, to Indian religion, to Indian societal norms. So the question is, okay, if you do not want radical feminism in its most radical forms like you would see in countries like Sweden, then what do you want? How can you articulate how do conservatives want it? Now, equality for women. Here are some points that should be brought up. Each country has its own attitude, towards women's roles, and within each country, different communities have different notions of how they want it. In other words, if you were to talk about Israeli society, there are Israelis who are irreligious or not very religious who want it one way. Israelis who are traditional want it another way. Israelis who are religious and modern, like what they call in Israel religious Zionists, they want it another way. And the ultra-Orthodox or the Arabs, the Muslim society, the Arab society, we have Christian Arabs who are more or less not very religious, most of them, but Muslim society would want it even more conservative. So again, within each society, it should also be pointed out that we should not try to enforce a uniform. We don't have to enforce our beliefs on everyone, but again, there will be questions of legal status, etc. That yes, the law will be one for everyone in the entire country. So as I wrote here, different attitudes. There are different attitudes in different communities within each country. Everyone has to understand that change is coming, whether we like it or not, and we just have to ask ourselves what kind of changes we want. Now, another question is, when do we support evolution and when do we support revolution? What is urgent? What is the most urgent? In other words, many people will say in the conservative camp that, yes, we believe in change. We don't think that we have to, just because our ancestors rode on horses and camels, that we have to ride horses and camels. But, okay, so change is coming, but we want it slowly. We want our change evolutionary, not revolutionary. We don't want a revolution. We don't want anyone burning anything down. This in the West, this idea is most associated with the British thinker Edmund Burke, who criticized the French Revolution and said that it would end in blood, and it actually did, because he said their ideas were so radical that they were completely unstable and it had to lead to destruction. And again, he is associated with the idea that change should be brought about gradually and with caution, and change should not come as a dramatic revolution. On the other hand, one may say that there are issues that are so urgent in which even if we are conservatives, we have to adopt revolution. For instance, in Israel, there are in more conservative societies like the ultra-Orthodox community, there are issues of dealing with sexual abuse. And in recent years, in many years, if it was a topic that was not to be discussed, so you did not bring these issues to court in most cases, and if the abuser was a powerful person, he was a community leader, etc., then his actions were actually justified. In other words, they wouldn't openly justify it, but they would believe him and not her. They would say that, yeah, he is a holy man, he is a rabbi, he is a politician, how can you say such a thing about him, etc. And so recently what has happened in the ultra-Orthodox community is that people, they do not want evolution because they said it will never evolve. They will say, yes, we want revolution. And there have been a few high-profile cases in recent months, this is going on right now, in which prominent leaders of the ultra-Orthodox community have been exposed as sexual abusers. So in this particular case, in the case of sexual abuse, many people would say, no, we can't have people going around molesting our women, and therefore in this particular case we want revolution. We do not want evolution because it is such an urgent case that we can't settle with evolution. We need revolution instead. Now, another question that should be asked is, what are the big issues? What are the biggest issues in your opinion, right? You can say, some people will say that family size. In the West, we know that the family has gone below, the family size of family has gone below the retainment rate. In other words, the population is actually shrinking in Europe, if not for immigration. They would be, like Japan, in which the population is shrinking. India, of course, we know has laws that promote family planning, whereas Israel has the largest family size of any developed country in the world. Like I said, I come from a family of 5 children. We are not by no means the largest family. It goes according to religious observance. Most religious people have larger families. I come from a religious family, but even women, even non-religious Israeli women, have 3.1 children per mother. Again, this is a birth rate that is usually associated with the undeveloped world. In Israel, it is not considered a problem. It's considered something that's completely fine, as long as the family is productive and working and not trying to live off welfare budget, etc. Yes, because it should be pointed out, that it should be pointed out here for anyone who wants to look into these issues, that in a functioning modern economy, an educated parents can actually support more than 2 children, even if the UN, advocates for 2 or 3 children, whatever. In a modern economy, one can easily support more than 2 children. So family size does not have to be a problem. Is not a problem if in a fully developed economy. Okay, education. Again, education for women. This comes in different variants. Again, should women be encouraged to have higher degrees, to learn science? How far should we encourage women to learn science? Maybe women are not interested in learning, physics. Maybe they want to learn medicine or biology, or more people sciences. What the social scientists discuss. It actually has neurological sources of empathy versus systemization. What they call that. Men gravitate to more like things. What in popular discourse is called people versus things. Anyhow, so the question is, what kind of education should we encourage for women? One can also talk about religious education. In Israel, I don't know how many people are aware, women cannot become rabbis. I have arranged for this meeting a woman who is a religious scholar, but she does not call herself rabbi because women are not rabbis in Orthodox tradition. Again, India has its own different ways of doing this. Legal status and protection. Yes, if a woman, again, the case that I have just given, if a woman, God forbid, was molested, can she bring the case to court? Will the courts actually believe her? We know that in countries like Pakistan, they will not believe you. Again, Pakistan is not unique in this. Is not unique in this sense. You can also talk about countries less conservative than Pakistan, in which this is actually a problem. And you can talk about the opposite problem, about the radical feminists in America, where they said we must believe all women. Again, that is not the way legal systems work. In a true court of law, you do not automatically believe anyone. You believe the evidence. Okay, so legal status and protection. There are different issues, of course, yes, again, not even legal status, even social status. Can women run businesses? Should women run businesses? Questions like that. And as I said, avoiding radical paths. Even if we want to make change, like I said, not every change is good. It's much easier to make destructive change than to actually making positive change is actually much, much harder, and you have to put much more effort into it. The role of religion in defining women's status, as we know, many religions are a very conservative force, and they have reservations about women's rights. Even if it's more minor things about can a woman be a rabbi or a swami, or a qadi. In Israel, ironically, a woman can be an Islamic qazi, what you call it in India, but she cannot be a rabbi. This is ironic, but the Muslim community is more conservative in Israel. But yeah, again, there are different roles of religion can play. One can also say that, for instance, in taking care of sexual abuse, some of the main proponents of change in Israel were actually religious leaders. They are rabbis, they are women religious leaders who actually still are among the people who are taking care of these issues. So religion can also have a progressive, so to speak, role. Religion can have different roles depending on how we want it, the way we want it to be. And as I want to point out, that the Israeli working mother is globally unique, and religious Zionist women, the community that I come from, the women who are both religious and modern, they are extremely unique. As I pointed out, that many of them are very educated. They have doctorates, high profile business careers, science careers, etc., and yet they have large families. This in the West is almost unheard of. A woman who has a doctorate and 6 children. I can name quite a few such people, many of whom are famous. You can look them up on internet. They are famous scientists or religious leaders or businesswomen, etc., who have people, Israeli working mother who has a large family and can be very educated at the same time. And they don't see any contradiction between the fact that they will even define themselves as feminists, and they are for advancing women, and they are for having large families. They view their families as a great achievement, and one of their, many times, as their greatest achievement. The fact that they have a good family life, a large family, and they again, this you have to understand that this, you have to function at a very high level to do this kind of thing. If you are a mother of 6. And you don't function at a very high level, you will have 6 children living in a dysfunctional family. It is not easy, but again, it can be done. So that is something we must discuss. Thank you. Bye bye.